Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thanks everyone for joining us today. The topic that we are going to discuss is HR strategies for growing cannabis businesses. And before I dive in, I just want to share a little bit about my background. I got my start working in the Colorado cannabis industry back in 2009. Running and operating vertically integrated cannabis operations. And in 2015, I founded ICS Consulting, and I've been helping operators navigate the regulatory landscape for the last 10 years across the United States. Let's give a warm welcome to my next guest, Amanda Eastling. And Amanda is the founder of Eastling Services. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks again. I appreciate you being here. Why don't you go ahead and share with our listeners a little bit about your background and your transition into the cannabis industry. And also, I know you've been working in a new emerging market, so you can also share a little bit about that if you'd like.
Great. So I have been in human resources now for about 7 years, non-official and official. Was in manufacturing and then animal hospital. And then the job was posted for a tribe in Minnesota for human resources. And so I decided to try my hand in that market. For the last 2 years, I was working again for a tribe in Minnesota that just started out in the cannabis market. They were a complete startup. So I helped create all of the policies, the procedures, the guidebooks, helped implement a lot of different systems. And back in December, we decided to part ways with each other, and I decided I was going to start my own business. Here I am now with my HR consulting firm. I did pick up another job as a full-time job. So I am the human resource director for an oat mill in Minnesota, which is like flour, but oats.
Ooh.
I've been with them for about a month and a half now, and that is a very interesting industry to learn about oats.
That's so cool. Are they a farm and manufacturing company?
So they're a co-op. They are owned by 127 farmers.
I love that.
Stakeholders, board members. I'm the second employee. So it will be a mill, just like a flour mill.
Oh, got you. That's so cool. We're happy to also have you in the cannabis industry. And I love hearing about farming and agriculture. And as somebody who grew up in the Midwest, it's something I've always been interested in. So I love that you're doing that. And congratulations on your startup. I'm happy to have you on the podcast. And I'm always happy to support small businesses, especially women-founded businesses that are just starting out. And so we're really grateful that you're here. And we'll just dive in. What first drew you specifically to the cannabis industry from an HR perspective? I know you talked about the tribe. Were you interested before you went and took that job with the tribe in Minnesota, or it just popped up and you were like, oh, this sounds interesting. I think I'll take a stab and try this out?
Actually, it was that. I am not a cannabis partaker myself. And so I thought it was maybe something cool and interesting to try out, plus being able to work with the tribal community.
I think that's wonderful. My story to get into cannabis was the 2008 recession, for those who were alive in 2008. I'm dating myself here, but the recession was going on and I lost my job in the restaurant industry. And that's how I ended up in cannabis as a receptionist. And I moved to a new industry because at least during the recession, people were buying cannabis and alcohol. They weren't going to restaurants or spending money on catering. And it actually turned out to be an entire career now for the last 17 years. So you never know, like you could end up being in cannabis now for the next 20 years, Amanda.
You never know.
I love it. I want to tackle HR foundation for cannabis operators. What are the unique HR challenges that cannabis business face compared to other industries?
There is a lot more compliances that they need to follow, depending on if they're tribal versus non-tribal. But there are a lot of different compliances they have to make sure that they're following. Here in Minnesota, it's the OCM. Make sure they're following the state laws and the federal laws. And there are different things that go along with that. You're only allowed to sell alcohol. You're only allowed to sell a certain amount. And you have to make sure that your team is recognizing and looking at their customers that are coming in. If they appear to be very intoxicated or very high, you want to make sure that you're not selling them the product. Or if you're in a consumption lounge, you want to make sure, just like in alcohol, you don't overserve them because that can fall back on you and the business.
Not that being a Schedule 1 has really affected cannabis operators because people still file unemployment claims. They still have to abide by labor laws. A lot of times people think, oh, cannabis, the rules are out the window. We don't have to do these normal everyday business things, but it's just not true. You really do have to have human resource compliance and you're making sure that things are done correctly, especially around labor laws. How does compliance with labor laws intersect with cannabis regulations? I know we talked a little bit about it, specifically around hiring. And then also background checks is really interesting because there's a lot of background checks that happen in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, I can talk a lot more on the tribal side because that's obviously what I had done in the last couple of years. Though they had sovereignty, which is they get to make their own rules as long as they're following federal regulations. The tribe that I worked for followed a lot of those Minnesota state laws. We followed all ADA regulations. There was no discrimination for the age, sex, gender, race, religion, all of those kind of things. And then we did have a cannabis commission, and they would do the background checks, making sure that everybody didn't have anything in their background that would flag them from working for us. But when it came to the labor laws, making sure that the wages were with par with what they did have work comp, we did have unemployment, so made sure got all of that set up for the staff.
That's really important. Yeah. And background checks too. In a lot of states, employees have to get badged and get background checks. Some states don't require badging. I would say almost 99% of them do require some kind of background check for employees. There might be a couple states that don't, but I feel like almost every state that I've worked in, they always require a background check for employees, or actually anyone that's even going to be on the application, they require that. What are some must-have HR policies for new cannabis operators?
Attendance policy should be your number one policy. The other policy would be the no wearing glasses that have video recording on them. Any of those kind of things, because if you're in the back of the house, you don't want somebody to be recording what's going on and what your vault looks like and those things in the back of house, because they can share that and upload that to their social media. So make sure that you have a policy for that in place, a call out policy. You want to be able to be, this is who you call. Make sure you're doing follow-ups, because just because you text it doesn't mean that's a call out. I would say those are pretty crucial ones that you should have. If you're looking at non-tribal and you're going to state land, make sure that you have your wage policies going, your hiring policies. You want to make sure that you're following all of those things.
I have to say, that's the first I've heard about the Google Glasses. I'll just use that as an example. I've never even seen anyone wear those, but that's true. Google Glasses and phone, too. You shouldn't let employees walk into a vault with the phone because they could be recording and taking pictures. And in general, especially if you're in areas that you're trying to protect or security reasons, employees really shouldn't even have their phones out on the sales floor, and should be bins that employees could put their things in. And not only security, but also intellectual property, especially if you're somebody who's really trying to protect recipes or processes and how you're creating things. Those are really good. Like I said, I've never heard of the recording glasses. I didn't even realize that people were wearing those.
Yes, there's a lot of people out there that have them now.
Wow.
And your smartwatches have a tendency to record voices. So you have to make not only the eyewear, but your smartwatches or your cell phones, and make sure that you have someone in place for those recording policies.
You definitely need something with all the technology that's coming out today, and even AI. And when should cannabis operators begin to engage with HR services? I think it's really important because this is a struggle I see. I've been doing this for 17 years and nothing has really changed. 17 years later, cannabis operators are still struggling to start HR, have any HR policies or an employee handbook. Unless the state mandates it in your application package, and if it's not in the rules and regulations, I find that a lot of companies don't even engage in this process at all. Or they say, we're going to work on it later, and then they never do.
Yeah, they need to engage before they even start hiring any other staff. When you have a company that has staff members, they're get fixated into a way of doing things that they want to do it or the way they've learned it. And now all of a sudden, let's say you're up to 60 employees and you're like, oh, geez, I don't have any policies. We don't even have a guidebook. Let's hire human resources.
Yeah.
Human resources then comes in and they implement that. You're going to have a lot of pushback from employees because they haven't been following anything this entire time. So now you're coming in and you're telling them what to do. You're going to have resistance.
Oh, I know that.
There's a good chance you're going to have a turnover in staff.
You actually bring up a wonderful point. I'm so glad you brought that up because I have experienced that personally with running these operations where I came in as the new person. There were no HR policies in place. No one had even seen a handbook. There weren't even SOPs. And then you had to come in and create all these new systems. And I always found that it was really challenging getting existing employees to adapt to the new systems compared to a brand new person that you were bringing in. Almost in some cases that we had to let go of people because they were just rebelling and there was so much resistance and they didn't want to follow the new policies. You can actually create that situation in your business because it's like anything with a child. If you weren't implementing something with your children, let's say going to bed at a certain time, and let's say you let your kids stay up to midnight drinking soda pop and eating candy and popcorn, and you let them do that for a whole year, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you need to be in bed by 7 and have a bath and do your homework and no candy and no soda. There is going to be a complete meltdown. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And similarly, I think the same thing can happen with employees because you go from not holding people accountable to holding people accountable. And that's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, you are so right on that. You just need your HR in place first. The company I'm currently with is doing that. I was their second employee, but their other employee had helped get their business going in the first place. But we're doing it right. I don't plan on having any staff members till midsummer. So that gives me more than a few months to get everything in place that need to be in place.
Yeah, and I also find too, like before you open, I think it's the best time to get this stuff done, to get your handbook done. And even if it's everything is in draft form and all your templates and forms and all the different things you're going to be doing, and then talking with an HR person that you're going to be hiring, whether for someone like Amanda or another company, just having those conversations. How much is it going to cost? What's the different levels that you can start off? How do you budget that in so you know what you're going to be spending on HR in that year? And then at least you have it done because, for example, launching a dispensary, that 3-week period before you open, it's like drinking through a fire hose. And then once you're open, you're drinking through the fire hose for that whole year. You're so busy. You're working so much. The last thing you want to do is work on an employee handbook or do all these things or engage with somebody with HR and have someone do these things or even try to get your employees trained on the policies. And that's why it's important to start in the beginning because a lot of people, it just gets swept under the rug, to be honest. They get so overwhelmed, they sweep it under the rug. Bless you.
Thank you. I think the one thing that I have heard just in the last 2 months of venturing out on my own is we can't afford you. And I turn around and say, that's fine that you can't afford me, but can you afford a lawsuit?
Your prices are actually really reasonable. At the end of the day, that you have to look at unemployment and what that costs. And if you become a revolving door and people aren't being held accountable and there aren't systems in place, it creates high turnover.
Yeah.
I know this for a fact because I ran dispensaries for 6 years and I learned from that experience and the high turnover and the unemployment claims and understanding how to even deal with an unemployment claim. And if you lose the case, how that's going to actually cost your business more money. I just feel like, sure, you cut it in one place, but it's going to nail you in another place, right? You're still going to have to spend the money somewhere. I think it's a really sound investment. I wanted to talk about hiring and onboarding. How important is onboarding in these operations? And What should that onboarding include? A lot of times people are doing their own internal onboarding. I don't know if you have any best practices for that.
I think you've got to get your right platform in place with your onboarding. That's going to do your applicant tracking system. It's also going to do your payroll system and track your employees. The company that I've worked with and actually brought them over to my new company as well, what they do is you can hire them straight through the system and then it transfers into the new system. You can do the onboarding, bring the employee in on the first day or employees, sit down with them and do a structure. Introduce yourself, introduce your gold people, your board members, your cannabis commission. Make sure you know who all of those people are, and then talk about highlights. These are the highlighted policies that you need to make sure you're reading, which if you have the right employment system in place, they would have already have read them because in order to complete their onboarding, they have to read them. Review your point policy, your attendance policy, review those big ones. And then throughout the rest of it, get them their t-shirts or their swag or whatever that is. And then make sure your manager or supervisor comes back and you hand them off to them. They can do some hands-on training for the day. I have found that a lot of this younger generation learns by hands-on. We were younger, it's like, here's a book, here's a video. It's no, let me sit down and let me do it myself. Show me how to do it and then let me do it themselves. I feel part of that is a really great onboarding, but make sure you have a structure in place and make sure you have it written out. Don't just fly off the seat because that's when mistakes are made.
I agree. I learn a lot better being put into a situation. So I can relate to the younger generation that feels that way. I also find too that what has also been positive, I think, for employees is like this micro learning. Instead of pumping someone 8 hours of education, finding ways to break up that learning and having different types of engagement. I like what you said, where you're handing somebody off over to here, and now they're going to do some more hands-on where they're actually learning how to do it in person. So I think that's really helpful.
And I'll add on here, we partnered with a company called 𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀cie out of California.
Sure.
𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀cie 𝗜𝗍 is the chancellor out of that. And through that onboarding, we would have courses set up for these employees. So they would sit down throughout that first week. And maybe let's do 2 hours today where you're learning retail bud tending. Or your manager, there's a management course that's in there. And throughout that, you're breaking up the day. So let's go do register. Let's go do security guard. Let's learn policies. But now let's sit down and get you on that. Not only that, it's additional courses through different learning systems. Let's sit down and learn through Prior Plus for the day. You want to consistently have that extra training for them.
Yeah, I love that. That's obviously a great platform. There's 𝗘𝗽𝗓, there's Green Flower Media. I use Learned Brands a lot. I use that when I work with my clients, when I onboard them for training, and that way I can focus on the more state compliance regarding that role. That's more role-based compliance and metric training. For training and employee development, what does ongoing training play in employees' retention and compliance?
So that is part of what I spoke with about 𝗘𝗽𝗓 or maybe Prior Plus. There's always new courses that Dale and her team have consistently popping up through that. And I'm sure the other community colleges or whatever they have out there, there's other community colleges out there that offer different courses. For me, it was doing lots of one-on-ones with them, individual members. What can I do to help you? What would you like to learn? And they would tell me what they want to learn, or they'd say, I'm in a great spot. I like where I'm at. So it's, let's get you on this course to keep you up to date. Maybe they changed how to format cells and Excel spreadsheets. And it's just constantly keeping up with the new trends and asking, what do you want to learn? Not, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm a, where do you see yourself in 6 months kind of person.
Yeah. I think it's always good to have short-term and long-term goals. And I love that. I think too, it's also important to remember that the training aspect in the cannabis industry, that is what helps with retention. It's when there's a lack of training that creates a retention problem. I think employees, they're a lot smarter than people want to believe. Like, they know when a business that cares about employees or doesn't. And if that business is investing in employees, investing their time and training and onboarding, whether that employee stays 6 months, a year to 10 years. A lot of times people complain, why would I invest in employees? They're just going to use me as a stepping stone and move on. It doesn't matter. You should be investing in all employees, and no employee stays forever. Every business is going to be a stepping stone for that employee's career. They're going to obviously grow and move on and go do something else, but it shouldn't be the excuse to not invest in employees and training. And so I think when you have training, it creates that thriving environment. And like you said, you're asking employees important questions. Where do you want to be in 6 months? Are you getting everything you need? What other training do you need? I think that alone, that's awesome. I wish everybody did that with their employees. I think people would have way better retention in the cannabis industry that they even had those types of conversations.
I have a success story I can tell with that one. I had an employee at one time who started out as an inventory person. And by talking to them and coaching them and asking those questions, they had already been promoted into a supervisor first year, and they had never had a job before this job.
Wow.
So if you ask your team what you want and where they want to see themselves, that's going to help your team morale. But also, to go back to your point of, I don't want to be their stepping stone. I love being their stepping stone because they're going to remember me. They're going to say, I had this employer who helped me get to where I'm at. So I would rather be that person than the silent person.
It's true. And I actually, out of all the people I worked for, there was only one company that was that way with me. And to this day, I have never forgotten them and how amazing they were and how they celebrated that I was moving on and growing into a bigger role and that my career was evolving. And I think that's important to be that way. And I think too, I love that story that you shared because you have to create the ability for that employee or that space for them to come up to you and say, hey, I would like to grow in your company. I would like to learn as much as I can in this role, but I would like to evolve and get more responsibility or become a manager or gun for this position here in a year. What are some things that I can do to get there? How can I improve myself? And create that space and have those conversations with the employees. Are you happy in this position? Are there other positions that would interest you? Are there more things that you want to learn? And then you can promote within instead of having to go on Indeed and put out all these job offers. That you'll have people who actually want to thrive and grow with the business as it grows. Who knows? There could be opportunities in other states. Lots of these little companies, all of a sudden, they're like, hey, we're going to go get a license in Minnesota. There's a lot of things happening in Minnesota right now. A lot of people still need to get open in Minnesota. People still haven't launched. They're looking for employees right now in Minnesota. There's going to be so many wonderful opportunities. There could be a company in Colorado, which I know there's actually probably quite a few, that went and got a Minnesota license. And there is going to be an opportunity for somebody in Colorado or in Minnesota to be able to work for a company that's in 2 states or 3 states. And maybe they could end up in Colorado or they end up in New Jersey or New York, wherever. And there's lots of ways to create opportunities. And I'm all about hearing those success stories. And I think that opportunity would not have been there had that space not been created for that employee.
And you briefly mentioned the promote within. That's actually another policy that you should also heavily look at. Is your morale is going to go way up if you say, hey, I'm going to create this policy and I'm going to open this job to internal staff for 1 week. And as long as you meet all of these minimum qualifications, I'm going to look at you first. And then after that 1 week is done, you don't have qualified candidates or the right candidate, then open it externally. But now you're giving your staff that opportunity to grow within your company. And they're gonna want to stay. I personally would want to stay with a company that they want to promote within first before they look at external candidates.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a great idea to have that as a policy. And I feel like as an employee, it allows me to create a goal at my job. And if I do want to become that inventory manager, there's some people really good at inventory management. It really takes like somebody who loves data entry. It's tedious work. I do metric. It's like you're counting beans, right? You're like a bean counter. But there's some people that are incredible in that position. What a wonderful way to create opportunity. I wanted to also talk about performance management and employee engagement. What are some strategies that help operators manage performance effectively, especially in a high turnover industry? Obviously, the cannabis industry could be a high turnover.
I think the first and foremost is treating your team as they're a family. You want that morale built within your team. You want that comfortness. You build that relationship. Sorry, I can't make it in tomorrow. Why can't you make it in tomorrow? Let's talk about it instead of you're a no call, no show. You don't want to be that employer that, yes, you have rules and yes, you have guidelines, but you also want to be that empathetic employer to understand. And a person's going to want to stay with you a little bit longer if you're more empathetic towards them and not like with a gavel. But you definitely need that training. You need consistent training to everybody. And I think it's burnout. A lot of it has to do with burnout because they are understaffed. When it comes to trimming season, those guys are working 6 days a week, sometimes 12-hour shifts.
Wow.
I've seen it at the cultivation and they were pretty strapped. They had to pull some people from the retail store or the production store or the delivery services to come help trim. They were even talking about, hey, do you know anybody local that can come in 5 hours a week? And that's a big burnout when you have that. You have to prepare yourself and you have to have extra staff on hand for those seasons.
Yeah, trimming could definitely, depending how often you're harvesting. And for like outdoor grows, it's Croptober. It's that one-time harvest. And a lot of the outdoor grows, they don't even have really a lot of people that work for them. And then all of a sudden they're hiring temporary staff for harvest season. But for indoor grows, some people could be harvesting once a week. What are some common HR mistakes that operators make and how they can avoid them?
Common assumption. Assume that you know the answer. Because I promise you don't know the answer. I still make mistakes left and right. But that is the most common HR mistake, is assuming you know the answer. If you're doing it in disciplinary or anything like that, make sure that you are asking all of the questions. Make sure you have a list written down of the questions you're going to ask. When you go off script, that's when you mess yourself up. And the other one is not reaching out to your legal team. Your legal team is there to help you. So if you're creating a new policy or a new handbook or anything, make sure you're having your legal team review it before you implement it, because you may have a word that's wrong and an employee is going to take it the wrong way.
Oh, that's so true.
And then the other thing is talk to your cannabis commission. Find out if they have anything new that's coming out, because you may be aligning your policy to something that they have. But if you're over here and they're over here, you're not where you need to be. So again, make sure you're reaching out to your legal team or your commission or whatever you're using and follow.
Yeah. How common is the struggle with employees being high on the job? Has that been something that's been happening in Minnesota or hasn't really affected Minnesota?
I can say in the last year and a half, I may have had some staff members that were under the influence, but not impaired influence.
Okay.
You obviously say that we are a safe zone. There's no smoking while you're working, that kind of thing.
Is it a popular policy that people are using to have an impairment policy for drugs and alcohol? Has always been part of a policy, especially in a handbook. How are operators dealing with the fact that they're in a legal cannabis industry where it is legal to purchase cannabis? Are they still having a no cannabis consumption policy while at work?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's just the same as tobacco and alcohol. You just slip that one extra cannabis word in there. No consuming while you're on the clock. What you do off the clock, we can't control. But if you come back impaired, your disciplinary actions are going to happen. You could bring me a medical document that says that you can do it. We can talk about that a little bit, but you can't do it while you're working.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this still happens, but like in the early days when I was running a dispensary, I had an employee, I think they took like 100 milligram edible and they couldn't even open their eyes. And I thought to myself, why would you come into work on 100 milligram edible? Anyways, I had to send them home. Like they couldn't even function. And it was just so crazy. And I've done audits where I've walked in and the grower that was walking me through in the audit was so blitzed out that they couldn't even answer any questions. And I was like thinking, my gosh, what if I was a regulator right now? This is so crazy. And then when I brought it up to the owner, the person that was walking me through the audit was impaired. And his excuse was like, everyone's high. You can't find anyone who's not high in the cannabis industry, which I don't think was true whatsoever. I don't think that was true at all. I think it had to do with he didn't implement a policy at his cultivation facility, but he just said it was out of his control and everyone was high all day long, which I thought that was such a crazy excuse because lots of employers are not stoned all day or high or intoxicated while running these operations. That is just a horrible misconception of the cannabis industry.
It is. And so one of my clients that I do have out in Colorado, the policy, because that was brought up that one of the staff members, I didn't eat it and I didn't smoke it, but you drink.
I drank it.
So I had to rewrite the policy for them on any type of consumption of cannabis.
That's the wording. I'm telling you, the employee handbook, I recently had one where I put it in, they couldn't even be in their car on the premise in the parking lot, which saved them. My client was very happy because the regulators had asked, do you have any policies for consuming cannabis on site? And I was like, oh yeah, we have it 12 times in the employee handbook. Let's just send them the employee handbook. And they were laughing at me. They're like, Jenny, you put in here, they can't have it in their cars. And I'm like, absolutely. Because if they're on your property, which is the licensed premise in the parking lot, let's get to the nitty gritty of it. The facility diagram that you submitted with your application that got you approved for the license, that you have the licensed premise drawn out and that parking lot was part of the premise and they're smoking cannabis in their car, they're smoking on the licensed premise. And that could get you in trouble. So I always put that in the employee handbook just as protection. I've pulled up for audits and seen people doing dabs in the parking lot, smoking vape pens in front of the camera on the premise outside, just the back door. I worked for somebody once who wouldn't even let anyone smoke cigarettes anywhere near the property because he thought cigarettes look like joints on camera.
Oh, okay.
And he was just so freaked out about it. If they're looking at the camera, how would that regulator know? Was that really tobacco or was that a vape pen? Because they really do look similar.
They do. And we looked at implementing that one at another place that I worked at, the no vape pens and all of that. And it was advised to us to just kind of let that one go. With my new company, I do have it written in there. It's the food industry, so there's no smoking on the property whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
And even smoke on your breaks. But yeah, those are definitely watching your words and how you word them is it's a must.
Because employees will literally take it to the grave.
Oh, they never know.
It says this, and I'm doing exactly that.
That's why you have to have a legal team review all of that stuff.
It's so true. Let's talk a little bit about compliance and legal considerations. How do HR practices intersect with cannabis regulations, for example, like SOPs and record keeping and employee safety?
Your HR practices align with your cannabis regulations. Again, like I said before, make sure you're reaching out to your cannabis commission to find out what their regulations are, what their policies are, so that you can review your policies and all of that and make sure that you're aligning with each other. You don't want to say that it's okay to do it this way, but your commission is saying, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to get either a license pulled or you're going to get yourself in trouble. So make sure, again, that you're reading their regulations. When it comes to record keeping, make sure you have an employee's file in your database and list each individual folder, whether that's an attendance folder or an infraction folder, new hire documents. And every time you write something about that employee, put it in a log. I actually learned this from one of my previous employers is they taught me keep a staff log, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it. I'm like, okay, So you open your Excel spreadsheet, right? And each little tab on the bottom, that's your employee's name. And here's the date. Here's what happened. Here's where you can locate it. And if you can hyperlink that to where you saved it in the employees folder, it's easy to just click, okay, Snow White yelled at the staff member 2 months ago. Now I'm going to look up Snow White. Okay, here's that documentation. Instead of looking through all the folders, I can just hyperlink that and go back. Or if the commission or the OCM comes in or whoever it is wants to see something, you have that staff log. It's so easy to track all of your employees.
I love that staff log idea. That's a really good idea. I always talk about having a regulator communication log. I probably like logs way too much. How long should someone keep employee files for? If that employee leaves, how long do they have to keep those for?
7 years.
Wow. Wow. That's like taxes.
Yep. You got to keep those employees folders for 7 years because they can ask once a year for a printed copy of it. They can ask up to twice a year to review it. So you want to make sure that it is saved somewhere, whether it's digital or paper. I always highly recommend digital just because it's saved somewhere in law land versus a piece of paper that gets lost.
Wow. I never knew that. I could have asked for my employee file for the whole 7 years. I guarantee nobody held on to my stuff for 7 years. Not in the cannabis, maybe outside of the cannabis industry, but I did not know that. That is wild.
Yeah, it's the same as any other human resource position, whether it's cannabis or non-cannabis. And that goes the same with OSHA. OSHA, you have to keep those logs for 30 years.
Oh, yeah. OSHA, don't mess around with OSHA. Just keep everything. Don't ever throw it away. And I always say, too, with record keeping, especially around finances, anything around money and sales, keep it the amount of time that the IRS requires you to keep your taxes on file. Save everything because they could come audit you going 7 years back if you're even been operating that long. That's good to know about the file. Some people listening and were like, holy cow, I did not know that.
Then another thing I'll throw at you that I found out not a lot of people know, you can take a copy of somebody's I-9 documents, but you cannot save them in their personnel file.
I do know that, actually.
Yeah, I found out there's a lot of people that didn't know that. So keep it as a separate file from their personnel file. I just destroy it when I'm done with it because once it's already recorded, I don't need it again. If I need it again, I'll ask the employee. But yeah,
it can't be in their folder. I actually learned that in 2014 when I was recruited to launch a adult use dispensary in Denver. And the woman that recruited me to come run it and launch it, she trained me on HR. I was managing the cultivation facility and the dispensary at the same time. And so I probably had 100 employees that I was managing. And she was like, never put the I-9 in the employee folder. And I was like, wow, I never knew that. Yeah.
I found that out when I started in human resources. And I was like, I didn't know that. So
I think probably a lot of people don't know that.
Copy just practice not to keep it. If you have the right platform in place and you have it uploaded and it's verified, you don't need it again.
Let's just say it's a mixed bag in the cannabis industry. I'm from Colorado, we're a mature market. We have people that aren't always doing things correctly. And it's just some of these people started back in 2009 and they just have never updated how they do things. And they've been running it the same way for 10 years. But I would say probably nowadays people are probably doing a better job at that, especially in the emerging markets. I kind of want to talk about like remote or hybrid work trends. How can HR policy support flexibility while maintaining operational compliance as far as a regulated cannabis business, other than maybe the accountant might not be working on site? Are you seeing too many trends with hybrid?
No, not outside human resources and the finance department. For me, I was in-house 3 days a week, was remote 2 days a week.
Yeah.
The same. Our marketing, I could see them being remote work because they're not necessarily need to be there.
Correct.
Pictures of the plant, but your operators, your managers, your supervisors, those are things that need to be in-house.
Yeah, I could see marketing being hybrid, sales too, as well, because
Yep.
I could see a sales position being hybrid. Obviously, if we're out of the regulated operations business, there's probably a lot of people that are hybrid. that aren't plant touching. But I think for the regulated businesses, it's probably a small amount of people that are hybrid. Maybe if they have an administrative office, especially if you've got a company that has like 20 plus licenses, they probably have a headquarters or a main office that's not even connected to a regulated licensed operation. And that's where they might even house their HR department there, depending on if they're big or small. I want to talk about advice for scaling operations. As cannabis businesses grow, what HR structures should be implemented first?
Your employee platform needs to be implemented first.
I like that. Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to put everybody. So as you hire them, they're automatically get put into the system. And then in the system, that's where you will then upload your policies and your guidebook. So you're not emailing them out to everybody. It's automatically in the system. The other thing after that is you want your benefits, whether you're doing one or not. I know in the state of Minnesota, it's required to do 401. So you want to make sure you get your 401 implemented. And then from there, you go off the other stuff. But your first is going to be your employee platform.
I have a question too. I'm glad you brought up benefits. What if I'm small? And I have this happen a lot. I work with a lot of small operators where they're spending all their capital just to launch. They're paying rent on a building for years trying to get open. And then they finally get open, but they're not able to do employee benefits right out of the gate. Maybe they have to wait 90 days, or maybe that it's going to be 12 months before they can do it. What happens in a state like Minnesota where you are small and they have to pay into the 401k, the employer?
No. So if you can't do medical, dental, and vision, that's on you. You don't have to offer that, but you do have to offer the 401. You do not have to match, though.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the thing is that now, if you have 10 plus employees in a 401k program, they're all automatically enrolled. The federal government is, look, people are missing out on this money. We don't understand why. So we're going to automatically enroll them. Now, every year after that, it is an automatic, they go up 1%. So let's say I put in 3%. Next year, it's automatically going to go up to 4%. You can go in and waive all of that. That's your prerogative. You want to stay at 3%, that's up to you. It's just the system is actually working for you now. So that if you don't want to match again, you don't have to, but there are actually great benefits of matching. You do get tax credits back now.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I think the 401k is a great idea. I think employers can do it and not have it cost them a lot of money. If you can't offer anything for 90 days to a year, at least start with that 401k, because isn't it just like an annual fee the employer pays to get it going for the staff?
Yeah. It depends on which company you go with.
Yeah. But there are ways to do it in an affordable way for a small operator. And then let's just say 90 days to a year, you could then start offering the dental. And there's so many great things too. I find that when you get these employee benefit packages, you can get pet insurance. Pet insurance is really popular now. That was not around when I was an employee.
And I think more people are treating their pets as their kids than what they used to, because pets are cheaper.
Oh my gosh. I grew up in Ohio where our pets lived outside in the garage. My mom would buy bales of hay. I'd be like, why can't they come in and sleep in our beds? Nope, they have the bales of hay that they're going to sleep on. In the Ohio winters in the garage, we were not allowed to have the pets inside. They never got treated like they were kids or anything like that. But obviously it's changed because people aren't having kids and they're just getting dogs and whatever, cats, fish, whatever floats everyone's boat for a pet.
My mini cow may have snuck into the garage or this last weekend with our snowstorm.
Don't hate on me. I love eating cows, but I also love cows. I think they're very sweet and cute, and I love all animals. Let's see. Another question I have is, how can operators ensure HR policies scale with growth without losing the company culture? This is really good. If I'm small and I have this great culture and I built a solid HR system, but now all of a sudden we're going to start going in other states, I think sometimes you can lose the culture and the systems get put to the test. Any good tips around that would be helpful.
I think the best tip is build that relationship and rapport with your team. Hey guys, this is a new policy that's going to be coming in place. Just letting you know about it, whether you like it or not, it's coming into place essentially. I recommend always updating your handbook or your guidebook, whatever you call it, in your policy every 6 months. So January 1st, July 1st. And that's because new laws come into place January 1st or July 1st. So if you're getting ahead of the game, June and December, you're looking at what new laws are coming out. You can start working on building that and talking to your staff about it. Be like, hey guys, this is a new law that's coming out. So I'm going to change the policy. And then that way it's coming ahead of time and it's not just, here you go, now you have to follow it. Because you want to get ahead of arguments, as you would say.
And you don't want your staff all of a sudden saying, hey, you didn't bring up this. I know employees that regularly go to the labor department's website and they just love knowing what's going on with labor laws and how it affects them. And there are employees that do follow that. And you don't want your employees telling you, you didn't follow this labor law. Did you even know about this? This went into effect on January 1st or whatever. That's not good. You don't want that to be happening.
Where that close relationship with your legal team comes into place, making sure that you're both on the same path.
You brought up employee systems. I love what you were talking about, these employee systems where you're uploading the handbook and all the policies. And is it like a digital cloud? Can you give examples of what systems are out there?
Yeah, certain names. I'll just keep out certain names for now.
Sure.
But there are different platforms out there that you implement. And within these systems, you've already got the person's name, their address, social security, date of birth, direct deposit, beneficiaries. These are things that your employee is automatically going to update into the system. And then they get to choose their benefits. It's a lot less hands-on in my book because I'm not the one writing down all this information.
Yeah.
They're doing it themselves.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
then you can do time clocks. You can do scheduling. Payroll is all done through these platforms.
Oh, wow.
And then if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to let them know what platforms that I've used. I just don't know if certain people want me to mention names on it.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. I was just curious about the systems. I am familiar with a lot of the payroll companies in the cannabis industry, but I didn't know about these other. Is it just an HR system basically that just covers everything?
They're both called like payroll systems.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
don't house all. The only thing it doesn't house, and I'm sure it would if I actually play around with it a little bit more, but if you have like certain documents that an employee like came to your office and they signed, that's going to go into their personnel file that you keep digitally, not into the employee platform.
Okay.
But the platforms that I use, you can pull KPI reports. You can pull just the most random reports.
If there's unemployment claims, sounds like it's a lot easier to get that data over to the agent that would be in charge of your case if you had an unemployment claim that was filed.
I was going to say, but if anybody wanted to reach out to me personally and ask what some of my systems are or what my experience is with some of these systems, I'm happy to hand out that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. And in wrapping up, important HR tips that you want to leave cannabis operators with, something that we might not have covered.
I think that the best thing I can add for anybody starting out is, one, make sure your license is in place.
Yes, please. Yes.
Make sure you know where you're going to get your products. I do not recommend saying, hey, I want to open this, and you open your doors and I don't have any product. Make sure you know where your product is coming from. And then work on your human resources. Bring them in so they can build up your team. And then you can work on your trainings, all of those things that are needed to be done. And if you have any hesitancy about an employee, personally, I say get rid of them. You don't want the headache, especially in a startup company. Snow White's been with you for 3 months and they came into work maybe 2 times on time. You don't want to keep struggling with that when there's another employee that can.
So true.
It's just use the system, use what's there available to you. And I know sometimes human resources are expensive to hire them on and have them as an employee, but then you've got people like me who are fractional HR where I just come in and I help do your documents and get everything up and running. And then I'm hands off. I let you have it at your own.
Yeah, create that culture. It's true. You don't like conflict or being uncomfortable and having those conversations. with people and having to fire people and let them go, then you might be in the wrong industry. Firing someone is so uncomfortable. I had to fire a lot of people when I was a manager. It was something I had to learn. It was absolutely uncomfortable having to fire someone. But at the end of the day, if everyone else is working hard and someone on the team isn't pulling their weight, it's really not fair to the people who are working hard to have somebody coasting or riding the team's coattails. That person doesn't want to be there. Why have them there just because you're too scared to have that conversation with that person to let them go? Some people don't let people go because they're just so uncomfortable to have that conversation, but it's really part of doing business. Yeah. I'm sure everyone's been fired or been hired or had to fire someone. It's a really uncomfortable conversation. Letting someone go is always super uncomfortable for me. So I always had a checklist because I would get nervous. I would get really nervous and then you forget things. I would have a checklist to make sure I covered all the basics. You want to close out, especially with compliance, things like metric, the seed to sale tracking, especially if they had a lot of permissions in metric. You don't want to fire them and they still have all these permissions in the seed to sale system. Yeah, really helpful. I appreciate you coming on today. For those listening, I am going to have Amanda's information. As always, I post everything in the description box. Whether you're listening on YouTube or streaming, that information will be there. Please reach out to Amanda. She's happy to help you or answer any questions that you might have. And for those who stream the podcast, it is available on Spotify and Apple and wherever you like to listen. And please check out at Under the Microscope with Jenny, my YouTube channel. Thanks again, Amanda. I appreciate you being here. Very helpful topic. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. I guarantee there was somebody listening today that had no idea they had to at least do probably 2 of the things that you mentioned. At least 2 at a minimum.
That's good to hear.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you on next week's podcast.